Welcome to tonight's webinar on energy healing for the circulatory system. I'm going to give a brief overview of what is energy healing for all the new people. Then we'll do 3 minutes of silence, followed by a prayer of gratitude. Then just a little brief description of the circulatory system and its role in energy healing and how it sort of interfaces with the energy healing process. And then we'll just dive into healings. I think that's probably the best place we can go with this. So thank you everyone for being with me. I'm really excited. All right, so what is energy healing? Energy healing is a simple process, actually. It's a process of focusing attention in a way that makes a difference. Using attention. It's using attention in a way maybe that we don't always use it. And I think that most of the difference of how we use attention energy healing versus how you just normally use your attention is mostly the byproduct of just an awareness, attention awareness, right? So it's an awareness of the potential of the awareness to produce changes. So it's one thing to kind of randomly, wherever the mind wanders around, put the attention. And then it's a different thing to put the attention knowing specifically what the awareness is able to do. And when the awareness comes in with that level of wisdom and self-recognition, recognition of its potential, then a lot more can be accomplished in focusing attention. And one of the things that I find so beautiful about energy healing is that focusing attention is supernatural. Like, no pun intended, but you know what I'm saying, that focusing attention is something that we all do, like even newborn babies do. And so it's not hard. It's within the range and capability of everyone. Maybe we could say, well, having that awareness, having that recognition of what my awareness is able to do, like maybe that's something that's a little stretch for a few people, but it's not that much of a stretch. I mean, basically what happens is wherever your attention flows, your intelligence and creativity also flow there. And some of you who've been with me for a while have heard me talk about how wherever your attention flows, also soma flows. And soma is the finest by, you can look up soma on my knowledge base if you're not sure what that is, S-O-M-A. But soma is the finest byproduct of the digestive process, and it nourishes attention. It like enhances attention. So it enhances intelligence. It enhances the life-giving, life-supporting values in the body. So if there's a part that doesn't feel well, usually a person feels pain or some awareness awakens, oh, there's this area, it needs my attention. And the attention goes there, and then the soma goes there. And then the soma wakes up the intelligence of the body in that area that's responsible for maintaining and growing and healing that area. So there's a relationship between awareness and the physiology. It's important. This is the junction point that we work with in energy healing, is that relationship between awareness, between consciousness and the physiology. And we look at that junction point from different angles because it's in the junction or in the gap. I call it the gap. And I use these pictures of the ocean behind me to help illustrate that, because we can look at the ocean part, the water part of my picture as the great infinite unbounded wholeness ocean, the one source of creation, the transcendental field of all being. There is the water, and then the whole sky area as the manifest field of creation. And then there's this gap, there's this junction point between the unmanifest and the manifest. And that, my friends, is where energy healing happens. That's where the magic happens. It's in this junction point between consciousness and the physiology. And you notice in my picture, the ocean, which you'd think would be bigger, right? The source of creation would be bigger than the creation. Probably, I would say, yes, it is. But in my picture, there's more space devoted to what we would think of as the manifest level of creation, the physiology, because in energy healing, we're working with this. We're working with the dynamics of how changes down here in the gap between consciousness and matter give rise to specific effects up here in the manifest level of expression. So that's how energy healing works. Why do we take 3 minutes at the beginning of the webinar? Because in the 3 minutes of silence at the beginning of the webinar, we get a chance to experience this, and we get a chance to experience that. And it's nice in these, one of the big values of doing these webinars together is that we get a chance to explore this beautiful dynamic of how one wholeness appears as many and then marries the many, it enters into the many and thus evolves. And as a byproduct, our own individual story of evolution is also served. It's good stuff. So let's take a few minutes together experientially and close the eyes and feel that silence, feel that silent wholeness of creation, feel the gap. You know, if you're feeling and you're quite sure you're feeling it, great. If not, no worries. Have a little quiet time with the eyes closed, because we're all experiencing it in different degrees, but when we do it together, it's more powerful experience for everyone. One of my favorite times. So I'll ask you to close the eyes, and then in about 3 minutes, I'll ask you to open the eyes. And when I do so, please take a minute to open the eyes slowly. The more slowly we come out of that silence, the more integrated it is, the more it kind of seeps in and becomes part of us. All right, let's close our eyes. All right. Let's take a minute and then slowly open our eyes. No rush. We're going to go into the prayer of gratitude now. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything, for being each one of us participating in this live webinar, and each person who will participate in the future via the broadcast, the online broadcast. The whole universe around each one of us. Thank you to the eternal tradition of wisdom connecting in the gap, the unmanifest field and the manifest field. Thank you for our ability to work together harmoniously, concisely, efficiently. Thank you for this hour and 15 plus a few, probably. Thank you for our time together. It's so precious. And I'm so grateful to be the voice and to have the opportunity to describe these subtle changes that take place in the gap and how they influence the material level of creation. It's like super fun for me. So thank you. All right, everyone, thanks for being here. Title of today's session, Energy Healing for the Circulatory System. So if you go on my website, I've got several entries for the heart and for the circulatory system, but of course, always there are some awakenings that happen in the weeks just before a webinar to understand more deeply and profoundly what's actually going on in the circulatory system. The fundamental overview is that the circulatory system represents the flow of nourishment and bliss in the body. And one of the realizations that came in the last couple of weeks that I wanted to share with you is that we've talked for quite a while about how the one appears as many, and then it integrates into the form of the many. But I had a direct experience in the last couple of weeks about that integration process, and I realized it is incredibly blissful. It is such a marriage. It is such a marriage between the source of creation, that field of absolute wholeness, and the whole expressed level of the universe. And it's going on at every point in the universe at the same time. And this integration process, when the integration happens, when the boundaries and the barriers fall away, when the blockages fall away, and totality becomes enmeshed, it becomes totally integrated, it becomes totally like, it becomes those expressions of the diverse field of creation. And they become it, right? So it goes both directions. The diverse field of creation realizes, oh, I am that one. And the one realizes, oh, I am this, all this diversity. It's just so intense and it's so luscious. And I was thinking of the analogy of kind of like a marriage, right? Because it's this sort of sacred connection that is made between the absolute and the relative. And it's intense. It's really intense. It's so intense that I think that in certain ways, the human nervous system isn't fully equipped to comprehend the intensity of that process. Like comfortably, at least not at first. And I think that over time, with refinement, the nervous system can do that. The physical body can do that, but it takes a little intention on our part to get around to the point to kind of cultivate those qualities in the nervous system that allow a person to experience that like really in a very sort of rich and complete and thorough way, experience it intimately. So I think that's the first thing that I see happening is a download for everybody in the group of this flash of experience that also flashed for Dorothy over the last couple of weeks, this really intimate perspective on the relationship between the absolute and the field of its field of expression, and how at that moment when the integration happens, it's just so blissful. And when I say blissful, I don't mean blissful like um like riding on a roller coaster overwhelmed with bliss, but more like a sort of deep visceral transformation that occurs within the whole field of the, particularly within the sort of area of the central nervous system. I know it's the circulatory system, but anyway, in the central nervous system, there's an interface between all the different systems. And that's the area that I'm just seeing where both the experience and the integration of the experience taking place. I'm sure we'll work our way over to the circulatory system in just a moment. And it's interesting that as I'm seeing that in the group with you guys, I always just see so much more. It's absolutely luscious. Just like that marriage, it's like this luscious thing. And one of the things I'm noticing is that as the nervous system folds, there's kind of a self-referral process where the nervous system is sort of looking at all the senses of perception, inner and outer, are turned, and they're looking at the nervous system, and they're looking at how is this experience of integration of totality with a diversified field of creation, how is that understood at the level of perception and fine perception, and at the level of the direct experience of the nervous system, like what's going on, like every move, like every impulse of intelligence that rolls through the nervous system is an impulse of that marriage. And what I notice is like a kind of a scintillating awakening of energy in the core of the body, in the central core of the body. And that's happening from the physical level all the way in to the energy levels of the body, to the finest, the deepest level of the physical body. And it is I would say it's very activating to the fire element, the transformational element is awakening in the central part of the body. And it's not just in the nervous system itself or the central nervous system, it's also in that cord of light that runs from the crown of the head down through the body. Like the whole package is waking up. And it's interesting that the awakening includes this value of fire, subtle fire. At the surface, we have fire like in your fireplace, but down at the deepest levels of creation, fire has its personality, you could say, or its nature. It's nature. Nature to be the instrument of transformation. And the direction of the transformation is just sitting here in the gap, and it's just falling into the field of unmanifest, the unmanifest field. So it's not like you or I go, oh, the energy of transformation's there, well, it should do that and it should do that. No. It's just like the transformation is the transformation that the whole entire universe is doing right now. And because we're in our big collective, we each get to experience that from our unique perspective. It's very powerful because we pool our perspective I mean, one of the things that happens in that silent time is we kind of all get on the same page together to a certain degree, to whatever degree anybody wants to be on that page of the experience. Now we can go to the central nervous system. I mean, no, excuse me, now we can go to the circulatory system. So the circulatory system, as I mentioned in the advertisement, is a big system in the body, but it includes lots of smaller systems, and it definitely interfaces with a lot of the other systems in the physiology. Like the circulatory system has this sort of intimate relationship with the kidneys and the spleen, for instance, who are like the protectors of the heart. They're like the guards at the door of the heart, the guards at the gate. And it interfaces, of course, with the skeletal system, because the blood, all the components of the blood are actually made in the bone marrow. And the bones also possess so many of the resources that are carried around the body through the circulatory system. So there are these big veins, these big channels of the circulatory system that actually go into the bones, the interface into the bones. You've heard me say before, and this was another part of the downloads coming in the last couple of weeks, also like further detail, but I think it came up at the last webinar, was that one of the main ways that awareness organizes itself in order to heal is through the form of what we call known as Dharma. And Dharma, again, that's another term you can find on my knowledge base, DHARMA. And Dharma is a Vedic term that describes a principle that sustains creation, and it has 4 pillars or like fundamentals, and that's truth and compassion and orderliness and kind of like letting go, the ability to release, purification. Okay, so the thing about truth is truth stands steady, and truth is always, it always has an evolutionary effect. Wherever it goes, it produces evolutionary effect. But sometimes the truth is inconvenient, or sometimes it's too much. Maybe a person isn't quite ready for so much truth. So the second leg of Dharma is the leg of compassion. And I think it's really the leg of compassion that allows truth to be ultimately useful in the healing process. That's why so often, so many, I don't know if there are any energy healers that I know of that don't all fairly universally agree that that the heart center is one of the main activators of the energy healing process. I mean, I could be wrong. There could be some, if there are any out there, let me know. But the heart center plays a really important role in the healing process. And that's because knowledge or truth tends to stand steady, so it doesn't really move. But compassion or love can be, forms of compassion become the catalyst for the healing process. So it becomes evident that there's something wrong. And then one realizes, okay, the truth is that I need more truth in here, or I need some more knowledge to come in. I need some instrument for healing to come. And then the heart activates with that compassion. And the interesting thing about compassion is it can come forward in lots of different flavors or expressions, lots of different colors. We could call it colors or aspects. And the different aspects of compassion not only catalyze the healing process, but provide the interference pattern that takes apart the seed of dissonance in the body. It takes apart the underlying force or the root of the suffering. And so the circulatory system, the blood cells, the cells in the circulatory system, they represent this flow of nourishment and bliss and upliftment in the body. And There's also an element there of communication. There's also a communication element because the blood doesn't just carry nutrients around, it also carries other elements as well. You know, that blood can carry like communication elements like neuropeptides, proteins, hormones, all kinds of things. The blood is an amazing mix. There's the blood cells, the red blood cells, there's also plasma. And the plasma is sort of like the vehicle for carrying other elements as well. So there's a nice big rich mix of, we could say, chemical information that is carried around through the blood. So one of the things about the circulatory system is that it's one of the main channels by which we communicate with ourselves. The other thing that I was just mentioning was how the heart energy center, the heart, the circulatory system, the heart energy center is where we sort of begin the birth or the production of these different forms of compassion evolve. They evolve here in the heart energy center because the heart wisdom is specifically designed to kind of move down and to be very efficient and like very adept in this deepest level of the material expression of the body. I call that the causal level. That's another word you can look up on the knowledge base, causal body. So here's the heart energy center, pumping out both this lovely soupy mix of liquid in the body for communication and nourishment and purification. And then also it's pumping out this various flavors or flows of compassion that move, and they're often carried through the blood. The carriers in the blood can carry feelings. Oh, isn't that interesting? As well as physical material goods around the body. And of course, that makes sense because we know from the work of Dr. Emoto how the waters have memory and they carry feelings. And there's a lot of water in the blood, obviously, it's in the plasma. And so the feelings are also carried by the blood to different parts of the body. This part of our energy healing things, this part of the energy healing webinar is where we connect up with the heart of the Mother of Creation, because all those different forms of compassion are expressions of the intelligence of universal Mother, we could say, Mother Divine. So this unification, union, and recognition and reverence for our natural connection to the Mother of the Universe as an expression of ourself. What is the Mother of the Universe? The Mother of the Universe is all this unbounded, infinite, eternal, unmanifest, quality-less being, along with all of this manifest field of creation, and she is the integration. She is the integration of these values together. She's all of it. She's the whole story. She's the whole story. And that's also part of, that's our nature as humans. We have our anchor to wholeness, to totality. Then we have our whole physical form and all of our physical world. And then we own the whole package. This is the amazing thing about the human nervous system, is that we are capable of knowing that we do that. All things in creation do that. The animals and the plants and the molecules in the air and everything does that. But not everything knows that it's doing that. And not everything knows that it's doing that with such tremendous detail and understanding. Oh, nice. One of our participants is saying that there's a woman named Candace Pert who wrote a book called The Molecules of Emotion. Amazing. Yes, quite a wonderful woman, Vedic scholar who wrote this comment and has tremendous understanding of the field. Beautiful. The Molecules of Emotion. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because, and she's probably in the book, and I haven't read the book, but I would imagine that the book makes reference to neuropeptides, because neuropeptides is, that word neuropeptide references a whole family of different neurochemicals, all of which represent different types of emotions. So there's like a specific neuropeptide for grief, and there's a different one for anticipation, and there's a different one for even a feeling of, say, self-recognition or reverence or devotion or any of the different types of feelings that we have. There are all these different neuropeptides. They get carried, chemical messengers, and the body understands that. The tissues of the body, they know how to read. It's like reading. It's like we know how to read words, but the cells in the body know how to read neuropeptides. Thank you for offering that. Anyway, so this was some little overview of both the gross material expressions of the circulatory system and then also the subtler expressions of the circulatory system. And of course, I suppose as long as I'm doing a description, I should probably spend a moment talking about the heart as well, because that's an important part of the circulatory system. We have another comment coming in. It's interesting that the circulatory system is how we communicate to ourselves. In Ayurveda, the pulse carries so much information about what's going on in our body. Oh, that is such an important and useful point. So in Ayurveda, there's a diagnostic technique known as Nadi Vigyan, which involves taking, for women, you take the 3 fingers of the right hand. For men, you take the 3 fingers of the left hand, and you take them and you put them on the opposite wrist, just below this bone that's right there in the wrist. So the 3 fingers go like that. For women, for ladies, they go like that. For men, they go on the other side. And under each finger is possible to feel the status of the 3 doshas in the body: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, like that. And there are something, I believe I took a course on, there are like 27 layers of the pulse. So there's like more superficial feeling, and then there's like deeper feeling into the pulse like that. And by the time you combine the 3 doshas, and then you also combine the 27 layers of the pulse, it's possible to get a really detailed read on all sorts of things happening in the body. Also, the heart is considered, thank you for that comment, by the way, that's really lovely. I'm so glad to have the opportunity to bring it out. The heart is also considered the home of music in the body. And it's probably because the heart has it's such a nuanced muscle that, as we all know, the heart has this ability to produce all kinds of different beats, right? I mean, basically, the fundamental beat in the heart is a 3-fold beat: lub dub, lub dub, lub 1 2 3, 1 2 3, like that. But it has 4 chambers. It does that with 4 chambers, and we all know that sometimes when we're excited, the heart beats faster, and sometimes when we're very relaxed, the heart beats slower, and sometimes, the chambers can interact in various ways, and there are all kinds of nuances of the ways that the beating of the heart comes forward. And that beating, as I just briefly, I'll cover this, I mentioned in previous webinars, sets up a magnetic field in the body that is it's so powerful that it can be measured up to 3 feet outside the body. So there are no other organs in the body that produce such a powerful magnetic field. And therefore, the magnetic field of the heart interfaces with the magnetic fields of all the other organs, including the brain, which the heart magnetic field is like 60 times more powerful than the brain magnetic field. So that we can think of the heart as like the conductor of the orchestra of the body, that whatever's going on with the heart is essentially going to be influencing whatever goes on with the rest of the body. So if we have organs or systems that are not functioning well, it's useful to look to the heart and say, well, what's going on in my heart that could be causing, me to have like a lot of anger or angst in my urinary system, for example. Yeah. So of course, we know that when the heart beats fast or the heart beats slow is very much a byproduct of the emotions that we're feeling at any given time, right? And also, I would like to add to that how we interpret our experience. Because say you have a roller coaster and every car is full. And so there are maybe 24 people riding on this roller coaster. Each person will experience that ride slightly differently. Each person will interpret the roller coaster ride in a slightly different way through their own individual filters, right? And the filter is partly based on the actual physical construction of the nervous system. So some people, they're more kapha people. They're more steady. They're more stable. They're more calm. So they ride on the roller coaster and they're kind of like, haha, that's fun. But yeah. And then there are other people who are more vata constitution. So they're more like easily excited and they get on the roller coaster and it's like almost overload, right? So many different ways of interpreting the experience. And so each heart interprets that experience differently. And then each heart communicates to the physiology what that experience was about. And then each physiology forms itself around that experience. There's so much in that. Like we just came to this point now as a group where we can like launch out in a lot of different directions with this thing. But I think the most important thing here is the experience that brings an individual closer to their pure potential, that supports the marriage of the absolute in the field of the relative. Whatever that experience is, that experience of integration, that marriage experience that I mentioned at the beginning of this session is so profound and it's so intense, it's so intimate that I would say that when we first form, we're not really fully ripe. The nervous system isn't fully ripened up enough to get that experience. That I think it takes a more mature nervous system to get it. And I'm just going on my experience in this physiology and also my experience raising children and also working with people over so many years now, so many decades. It's just from the level of experience, this is what it looks like to me, is that it takes a certain level of maturity to be able to really fathom the depth of that experience, which is why we don't marry children off at young ages. It's good for them to mature first. This another layer of download of this experience, because each time we go through it, the nervous system integrates it a little bit in a little finer, more complete, more thorough manner. It's happening in every point in creation. It's happening at every location in the universe, is the marriage of the absolute with the relative. The entire Akashic record is the story of that marriage. There's a clearing a little bit of fear from the system, from the nervous system. I think the heart, the circulatory system gets it. And we don't have to, it doesn't feel like the fear has to clear from the circulatory system to get this, but it has to clear from the nervous system. And it has to clear from the mental and emotional bodies. And that fear is the fear of being overwhelmed by the intensity of that experience. And there's also a fear of feeling like one isn't equipped with the resources to deal with it. So these two things, doesn't want to be overwhelmed, doesn't have the resources to deal with it. And then under that, we're clearing for the ancestors. And now we're getting into the healings. And a lady actually asked a question about ancestors. So we're actually getting into a healing for you. And then I'll read your question. But the ancestors' deep beliefs that we will never, that it is not humanly possible to actually understand that experience, to get that experience totally. I feign to disagree. I feel that what we're doing with energy healing is we're actually transforming ourselves And we're helping also to transform by working with the ancestors. We're helping to transform also the entire of humanity. We go all the way back. We're going back. For those of you of Western descent and Eastern descent, we go back centuries, many centuries. I'd say we're going back at least 2,000 years or so of ancestry here to help wash away the belief that the limitations of the human form will never allow you to experience that. I disagree. I disagree. Because if you can have a flash of the experience, which we all got the download at the beginning of the session, and the download, by the way, when a download comes in like that, it comes in at a very deep level of consciousness. And that means it comes in a level that is not constrained by space and time. And that means that even though I was talking about it and I was saying, oh, a download is coming in at this point, the download just keeps coming. Because remember that this event, this effect is happening at every point in creation all the time. So there's no time that you are cut off from this experience. The very existence of your physiology is the byproduct of this experience. You can't, it's inescapable. So that belief that you can't ever really, really, really get it, no. And especially as I was saying, and this is for the ancestors as much as it is for us, that if you can have a flash of the experience once, it means that the nervous system, the potential of the nervous system is to adapt itself so that you can have that experience 24/7. And it's bliss. It's bliss. All right, yes, let's go into some healings. A question came in. How about a healing for the heart and the circulatory system? Absolutely. Now that we've done the setup. All right, so I've got some great questions. First question comes from a lady who is in her 60s. And she lives a really clean life. She's been she's taught like dance and yoga and exercise all her life, and she keeps a really, really clean, very pure diet. And she says that there's some stress levels. Her stress levels are not the lowest, but certainly her diet and exercise and meditation, she meditates, so she gets very deep rest. All these things are in line. And yet she has really, really high cholesterol. And her doctor, who's in his 40s, says he has the same genetic markers for high cholesterol that she does, and that he also is struggling with that, and he's younger. So the question is, if all these other areas of life are in order, you're getting regular exercise, you're getting a good diet, you're resting and staying as unstressed as possible, but there's still a kind of a heart disease issue going on. And it seems to be tied to heredity. How can energy healing help? It says, what do I see as the residual impressions on the circulatory system from the ancestors, their traumas, their undigested bits and pieces, her own karmic makeup, perhaps, all of the above? Wonderful question. So since we're already in the field of the ancestors, this question just ties in beautifully, dovetails beautifully. So this is the first area, is the ancestors' deep belief that because of the essential structure of the physiology, you will never experience that. You will never experience that level of the fundamental expression of universal intelligence that gives rise to this universe. But because every particle of the body is actually comprised of that, you will never be out of it. So for the ancestors, the beauty of energy healing is that all we have to do is put a little attention into the ancestral archive, and we are there. It always is good to enter the ancestral archive, to enter the field of one's ancestry with reverence. This, of course, creates receptivity on the part of the ancestors. And when I say the ancestors and the ancestral archive, I'm really talking about the DNA. That whatever those genetic markers are, they're in the DNA. And we think of the DNA and the genetic makeup as something that doesn't change. And that's, Western science has had that sort of attitude or approach for a really long time. But then if we really look at science carefully, we see that the nature of DNA is to evolve. DNA evolves, and that is a medical fact. DNA, they're these like little enzyme markers that like go along the DNA and they repair damage. DNA is changed and transformed by the presence of viruses in the body. We've talked about that on previous webinars. Thank you to current world situations. It repairs itself. It upgrades itself. It transforms itself through epigenetically, so through experience, the DNA changes itself. So the DNA changes. It changes. It's not stuck. It's not stuck. So the principle with energy healing is we bring our awareness in order to make changes in the DNA. And what that does is it upgrades and supports evolution of the ancestors, because your physical body is the expression of their evolutionary potential. It's very interesting. One of the reasons why, as difficult as it is to be in a human body, it's also an incredible privilege and an incredible gift, and something that souls will work hard to achieve, because you have that status when you have the physical body of being able to bring all those subtle changes that are going on in the deep levels of creation all the way out to the material level, and bless the ancestors. Reverence, entering the ancestral archive, bowing down with such appreciation, such love, such gratitude for the sacrifices that our forebearers made in order for us to exist today at the level of comfort and ease and grace that we have today. Amazing air conditioning, flush toilets, it's all good stuff. They had to struggle. Those who lived in Phoenix 100 years ago. Yeah. And finding those genetic markers. Like what exactly, where are those genetic? And all I'm doing when I say finding the genetic markers is I'm just letting my awareness sink down into the source of creation. And I'm just asking the question to being. What does the genetic marker look like energetically? What does it feel like? The genetic markers for the high cholesterol and we have other people that are dealing with blockages, artery blockages, and so there's also some genetic information there. This part of it is the cholesterol, right? Because cholesterol, it blocks. The element here seems to be a desire to slow down the evolutionary process. It's, I would say, misinterpreted as the desire to be comfortable now. Comfort, quality of life, builds up in layers. Just like blockages, just like cholesterol, it builds up in layers. And when the focus of awareness is to build up those layers in a way that is not only ultimately aligned, like most precisely aligned with the evolutionary trajectory of cosmic intention, the universe, how the one is intending to evolve in this world and in this field, but also that aim for the long-term, stable, consistent quality of life rather than the short-term, inconsistent, I can make it work if I slapdash it, but it's going to create problems down the road, something like that. There we go. Oh, shifting. Some shifting is happening. Some shifting. And that's something carried by the ancestors, is that idea. These three different ways of handling difficult situations, all of which don't work, right? One is, I'll just run away and pretend like it's not there. And the other one is, I will blame somebody else and explode on them over it. Or the other one is, I will internalize this and just let it just eat me up alive on the inside. All three of those approaches just don't work. And all three of those approaches give rise to different imbalances in the circulatory system. And all of that has to do with the way we handle heat. Remember I was talking about there was fire, the fire element? We were talking about the fire element? I thought we were. Or the compassion, which is the transformative element, and fire is also a transformative element. And the two organs that stand at the gate of the heart, the kidneys and the spleen, are also, spleen especially is in that area of the body, this sort of middle area of the body where the heat is the most heat producing area of the body. Pitta is the pitta element. There's a kind of heat that sits right in the middle of the chest, the sadhaka pitta they call. There are like 5 different sub-doshas of each of these doshas. They have 5 different subcategories. Sadhaka is here in the heart area, and it's kind of like the overseer of the other 4. It's more systemically, has more of a systemic effect in the physiology. Clearing these fears are clearing from that point deep in the center of the heart area where that fire sits. Now we're looking at the releasing element of the 4 legs of Dharma, right? You've got the truth, compassion, orderliness, and then the letting go, and it's the letting go element there. This letting go element, which is activating, this means that the flow of our awareness is kind of like, it's like wending its way through the circulatory system, and it's coming upon the purification potential of the circulatory system. Very, very important role that the circulatory system plays in the body is its ability to extract and carry the toxins from the cells and from the tissues and bring them to the lymphatic system where they can be eliminated. So important. So that's where the focus is right now, that ability to let go. And with the ability to let go, again, is this tremendous compassion, because the letting go process is, the purification process is, I would say, of the 3 values of the heart, what it does, it nourishes, it integrates, and it purifies. The circulatory system does these 3 things. That of the 3, the purification process is probably the one, the most, I would say, misunderstood or least appreciated, particularly when we're talking ancestry, because that's what we're doing right now. We're still in the DNA, and we're still looking at those genetic markers and those like aspects of that ancestral approach, the way the ancestors analyzed and synthesized their experience, right, that gave rise to certain types of forms in the DNA. Epigenetic, they don't like the purification, having to let go. A little harder. We think of success, and that's because of the definition of success. So what's happening is a purification for the ancestors on their definition of success and what that means to be personally successful. If we define success as more, there's a tendency for the ancestors to define success as more. It is the nature of the universe to expand, So we could say, oh yes, as the universe expands, we have more friendships, more comfort, more love, more abundance, like that. But that expansion and that more is not what defines us. This is where the crux of it. Now we're right into the heart of this particular part of this genetic healing, which is that in the crux of it is there's a tendency to self-identify with gaining more. So it's not so much about, oh, I identify myself as being successful if I have more. It's that I identify myself, like my perception of who and what I am is riding on that ability to have more. Because sometimes you have more and sometimes you have less. I mean, life goes in waves. If you just have more, pretty soon you're like stuck in a world, like with no room to move, right? Like a hoarder or something. So we don't want to go in that direction. It needs to, the more has to come and go in waves that allow the value or the quality of life to increase and express, I would say, allow the quality of life to, this is for the ancestors, to experience greater, more precise, direct experience of oneself as the expression of that totality and the expression of that marriage between the absolute and the relative, that luscious, incredible, intimate, profound, delectable value of creation as being what we identify with the ego and what we identify as self, is that deep connection between the absolute and all the field of the manifest creation. And then as whether we have a bigger bank account or a smaller bank account, the money comes in and then you buy things and then, it's like, it's a flow. And so that's it. Oh, it all is gelling in here. Thank you everybody for patiently with me while I go through this thing. Yes, so all that affluence and all that resource and all that, it has to flow. It flows in and out. It flows in as it nourishes the expression, the life and the sense of self. It flows out as it's purifying and carrying out what we don't need away from us. And both flows are absolutely necessary. And the whole story of the buildup of cholesterol and the buildup of material inside the circulatory system is like blocking the flow. It blocks the flow. And that blockage of flow comes from, I just want it to be the same and I just want to have more. And if I have more, then I am more. No, you are more sometimes by having less. Sometimes you are more because you just realize that you are beyond all of that. You're just beyond it all. And then all of a sudden, oh, you're more. So beautiful. So this is like a little package. It's like a little gift, a little download going into the ancestral archive, being offered with gratitude and reverence and love and appreciation for the ancestors and for their ability to rise above all those circumstances and situations and challenges that they had to face. So many of them, their whole life centered, if you go back several hundred years or further, the whole life just centered around survival, basically, right? For a lot of people, it was like that. Save for the very few who lived in luxury. So when person's saying the cholesterol is also genetic, right? More, they say with the big capital letters, more important in the USA, the normal ranges for cholesterol per gender and age are much lower than the ones in Europe, as a way of allow doctors to prescribe medicine and scare the patients into getting extra illnesses out of the fear and worry. Oof. And yeah, thank you. And other people are raising hands. Yeah, no surprise there. And boy, it's a little dangerous getting me started on the lack of truth that's running through the medical industry at this time. And it's part of my job is to remain somewhat neutral for all of you guys, because I love you all dearly. And I realize that within our healing collective, well, for one thing, medicine has become very politicized, right? It didn't used to be. You go to the doctor. It's not a political statement. It's just go to the doctor. But now, it's kind of a political statement. If you're going to get this medical procedure or that medical procedure, it kind of is a reflection of what side of the political spectrum you're on. So, our job in these energy healing webinars, all of our jobs, all the time, not just when we're in the webinars, is to unify, to integrate, right? We want to bring the wholeness together with all the parts. And some of the parts are way over here and other parts are way over there. And it's like, yeah, wholeness. When the opposites come together, the more opposite the opposites are, when they come together, the more dynamic of a union it is. And we're up for that. And our world is creating that by politicizing everything. We're creating this like extreme of opposites. Not everybody, of course, as many as possible are sitting in the middle as well, but we kind of have these extremes going on more than ever before, or at least more than in recent times in human history. And I'm not an official historian, so maybe there have been times when it was even more divided. I don't know. Anyway, it's rather divided right now. And what that does is it creates a condition for a marriage like no other. It creates a condition for a coming together that is more dynamic and more powerful and more profound than if you just got two groups that are pretty close together anyway. So thank you, everyone, for all of us, for everybody, for every part that every person plays in that scenario of going of the politicalization of everything from education to medicine to business to everything. Here in the heart, it's just unification. It's compassion with unify. So the compassion is activating. This is where we as a collective are putting our energy healing to work for the larger collective and bringing in this, what we know, something, that piece of truth that we have as a collective here that isn't as widely experienced directly and known in the larger world. And that is the nuanced and discrete understanding, the highly well-defined understanding of the exquisite nature of the marriage of the one and the many. It takes a big dynamic unification to bring together such diverse expressions in the political spectrum. Such a good question. And I'm just feeling the movements down here in the gap. It's just massaging. We're just massaging the gap with our awareness and the value of compassion with the knowledge of the marriage of totality and the universe, the material universe. That's a big compassion, you guys. That's big compassion. It takes a group like this to bring this type of stuff out. And what we do is, move happens down here in the gap. And then what we do is we just let that move become very delicate and as fine and as tender and as almost non-existent as it can be. Because small things become big things. Because the smaller the wave, the more profound its effect at the surface. The more it's able to like slide into the field of the collective. And this is where things get very interesting. And like down at this deep level is this, a lot of like interface between individuality and universality, so to say. And this ability to take this value of intelligence and compassion and bring it way way into the deep, most delicate, most tender levels of creation. What it does is when it starts to, the effect starts to slide. Oh, I love this thing that I get during the webinar. I only get this during the webinars. My whole head pops open and it's like my hearing is like so much better. Anyway, maybe for anybody who has hearing issues, God bless you all. Anyway, it slides out into the collective field so effortlessly because it's so delicate. It's like something small. It's like the change in the DNA, right? It's a very small part of the body is getting changed in there. The genetic code is being changed just a little bit through this experience that we're having. But what's really interesting to me about it is that sliding energy like has an energy signature of its own or a life quality of its own. And it actually carries the precise energy signature required to, right guys, I'm a little bit starting to derail because there's a sound. I told you that everything opened. I'm hearing a sound that sounds like an emergency something going on out there. The sliding softens the cholesterol. It dissolves the cholesterol. I think that buzzing sound that was out there, like an emergency sound or something, was the breaking down of boundaries, the breaking down of collective boundaries. Because this is the collective field around me, right here in Phoenix, started to like freak out and go, oh, alert, alert. And so, yeah, that's the breaking down of the boundaries, those boundaries that were built up for generation after generation of, oh, you can't do this. You can't know the truth of the universe. You can't directly experience the marriage of the absolute with the relative. Sorry, you can't. I won't let you. And we're just like, no, you can't derail me. Sorry. Compassion and the slide. Compassion and the knowledge of the marriage of the absolute and the relative give rise, they marry together. The child is the slide. It's the slide. It's a quality of slipperiness of consciousness. It's the quality of frictionlessness of consciousness. We know consciousness is frictionless because it moves faster than the speed of light, right? It doesn't grade against anything. It can go to the end of the universe and back faster than the speed of light. It can also go through the arteries and the veins and the chambers of the heart. And it can communicate that slipperiness to the elements in the veins and arteries that block the flow. A restructuring of the actual material inside the veins and arteries. That all the way down. We just bring it all the way down to the deepest, subtlest, delicate, most delicate. You see, guys, what I'm doing? I just keep doing the same thing over and over again. You can do this like with anything. So bring it down so fine, so delicate that it almost is not there. Right into the gap. That's slippery. Just the slippery is what we're bringing in. Or also the compassion and the marriage are also there. I feel as if my inner vision is just seeing all the circulatory, it's like I feel like I'm reading the circulatory systems of everybody in all the people here, all the people who shall be here. It's a great gift. It feels like a privilege, such a privilege to see. Directly experience the intelligence of the circulatory system of each person participating in this healing webinar. I use the word devata to describe that. And, you know, note to my team of one, note to my team of one, I need an entry on my knowledge base for Devata because I use that term so very much. Let us make an entry, shall we? We'll make some videos and do some healings and have a good entry on the knowledge base for Devata because it's such an important term. It represents the life force that oversees and administrates any area of the physiology. And your circulatory system has a Devata. There's an overseeing Devata. And I'm telling you, I'm looking at the Devatas here in all the circulatory systems, and it's just such sweetness. First of all, there is tremendous emotional sensitivity. Our ability to read the nuances of feelings that we self-communicate is far more profound and, I would say, powerful than we often give ourselves credit for. And on that note, for some people, I'm seeing a term that I use the word sanskaras, which I don't think I have that term on my knowledge base either. It should be, but anyway. But that means basically it's like scar tissue, sanskar, like, but it's sort of like the impressions that create when impressions get covered. And so there's an element of scar tissue that is dissolving in this part of the healing system, the healing webinar, the live webinar. We're addressing specifically scar tissue in the physiology, in the circulatory system, And this is so precious. This is precious for anyone who's had COVID. Oh, because that's one of the things that the virus does, is it can create a little bit of an element of scar tissue in the system. So everyone deserves to have that dissolved. But scar tissue is born of the underlying energy behind the scar tissue is feeling overwhelmed. I can't deal with this. I don't want to look at it. I'm just going to put up a blind spot or block that out. Remember, that was one of the 3 ways of dealing with things that don't work very well. One of them is, I'm just not going to deal with it. Yeah. But under that, I'm not going to deal with it, is that feeling of fear of being overwhelmed. And if I become overwhelmed, I'm going to have an experience that I can't handle, that I don't have the resources to handle. And if I become overwhelmed and I don't have the resources, that's going to give rise to an experience that's going to change my nervous system, and it's going to change me. It's going to change my DNA, right? It's going to create some epigenetic changes in me that are going to be not aligned with my heart's desire in this lifetime. That's a mess. It's like a mishigas. It's a big miasma. It's all this messy thing. The answer is, my heart's desire in this lifetime is irrevocably aligned with cosmic intention. This is the only way that your heart's desire, this is the only way you can exist in this world as a human. Because the heart's desire is what brings you back to the human life again. Some incompletion from the past. And if that incompletion doesn't align with the story of cosmic evolution, then the circumstances and the conditions that would allow you to come back don't happen. So what that means is that your heart's desire, the fact that it exists necessarily, is built on the reality that your heart's desire aligns with cosmic intention. And the cosmos that's experiencing all of time simultaneously knows exactly that point in the historical lineup where your heart's desire fits in just perfectly. For the space that we hold together. So what that means is, oh, thank you to our big webinar group. What that means is that all of our heart's desires, because we're all here together now in this world, all of our heart's desires carry certain things in common, right? Because there's a big story of evolution that's going on like this, and my heart's desire fits in, hence I am alive right now, and your heart's desire fits in, hence you are alive right now. That means that my heart's desire and your heart's desire are part of a bigger picture, and they fit together like puzzle pieces. How beautiful is that? How beautiful is it to find the marriage, to find the junction point where my heart's desire meets your heart's desire? That's really exquisite. And it creates at the astral level of the body, at the astral level where, because astral and causal levels are collective levels of our physiology, it creates a kind of fabric. It creates a fabric with everyone who is alive right now. Oh, when I say it, it just fills my heart with bliss. It just fills me. It's so beautiful. And I feel like it doesn't just fill the heart with bliss, but it creates a kind of a transformation or change in the way I understand and appreciate the astral body and myself as an individual and myself as us as a collective, ourself. We, me and we. Me, we. This healing that was such a big part of today's session. I'm looking at my time. I realize, oh my goodness, we're already over time. So I shall be answering more questions tomorrow. We'll start out with questions. More big questions came in tonight. That this realization that we have the capacity to deeply and intimately understand the marriage of totality with the entire expressed field of creation is something that the ability to do that is a byproduct of a more advanced expression of what it is to be human. And that means changes in the physical body, but it also interfaces with collective, the way we function together collectively. So it's a very exciting spot as far as I'm concerned to actually end today's session. I really, really appreciate it. Oh, look at all the amazing questions that came in. Mind blow. Okay, so I'm going to print out everybody's questions, and tomorrow we shall go more deeply into questions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with me. Oh, of course. It's such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure. It is such a pleasure. With all my deepest reverence to everyone here, and for bearing with me as I didn't even have an outline tonight. But I'm grateful for the places that we went. It was really wonderful and powerful. So I'll see most of you tomorrow. And those that I won't see live tomorrow, you will get the recording so you can take it at your own pace. All right. Thank you so much for being with me, everyone. Bye-bye.